Afternoon, and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. Well, it's been, again, an interesting couple of weeks. And, I was thinking here, if we had our discussions last night, you can really tell a lot about a people or a person, by the way they handle either joyous celebration, simchas as we call them, births, weddings, bar mitzvahs, and also, just as much, you can tell about how they handle tragedy, calamity, horrible situations in the world. You really can. And obviously, in the last recent period of time, we've, unfortunately, as a world, have seen a lot more, at least outwardly, we've seen a lot more of the tragedy side of it. And I think you can learn a lot about people, about how they handle it. I mean, obviously, the things that just went on, the terrorism, the things that went on in Paris, obviously things that are going on in Israel every day. And you look at how the different groups of people handle it. Example, in the United States, a guy goes into a college, up the college, kills some kids. Within 5 minutes, the president's on the news talking about gun control. If we just had stricter gun control, these people wouldn't die. So you wrap a political argument around the issue, and that's how you try to get your side, together. Or example, in America where, a black person's resisting arrest, a black young male, and a white cop shoots him. Next thing you know, everybody's rallying around it. Black Lives Matter, even though maybe right around the corner where they're marching and saying Black Lives Matter, a 9-year-old black boy just died by another black guy who shot him, and probably there's been 100 deaths in Chicago, 1,000 people get shot, 2,000 people, and nobody raises their hands and says a word about it because that doesn't fit the political argument. So that happens. Other groups of people, they build monuments, they put flowers, they do whatever. They handle things differently. With anger, which I understand, you get angry, people die, you do a lot of different things. But I think the Jews, and especially the Jews as a nation, like in Israel, handle things a little bit differently. And truthfully, I think probably the person or people who understand the Jews most, and for me saying this is going to probably scare you, I think John Kerry. John Kerry and Barack Obama, I think, understand the Jews and the way Jews handle tragedy better than anybody else. This is me,
This we've got to hear.
I'm going to show you how
Here
I tie.
it comes, guys.
I'm about to tie this in.
This is going to be a good one.
I'm going to tie this right in.
Yeah.
A week or so ago, John Kerry, mistakenly, and he wasn't talking about the Jews, but he was trying to relate to people in Paris why this incident was so different. This incident where they went into a concert and went into a ball game and shot and killed people, blew themselves up, killed people. Why this was so different than what happened in Paris in January with Charlie Hebdo, which is where a writer was writing a story about the prophet, and so they wanted to kill him. And then they went into a kosher restaurant and they killed him. And he said it real quick off the cuff. And you had to hear him before he changed his story. He says, you know what? Why this one hurts so most, based on compared to what happened in January, is because now we don't see anything legitimate about this. Then he quickly changed his words.
Right.
It's irrational. He tried to change it. And what he was getting at is, okay, Charlie Hebdo back in January, we get it. The guy wrote a bad story about the prophet, so killing him is legitimit.
Right.
A kosher market. We get it.
Well, they're Jews.
They're Jews.
Everybody understands why people kill Jews.
So I think that's what his whole point is.
Yeah.
And I think that's his whole policy, Barack Obama's policy about Israel. Not that he's for killing Jews. Barack Obama doesn't want Jews to die. John Kerry doesn't. But you know what? I get it. It's legitimate. For 3,000 years, when you're a Jew, you go with a Jew knowing that, listen, you could get killed. It's legitimate. You take that chance just by being a Jew. And I think he's right. I think John Kerry got it right. And I think Israel and I think religious Jews understand that. For 3,000 years, there is a chance calamity is going to strike the Jewish people. And instead of, we mourn like everybody else, we cry, we mourn, we have funerals, but then we go to God. We bring it back to God, and we understand this is part of life. And for a Jewish person, life and death are kind of similar. We say the same prayer at both of them. We say Kaddish, which we praise God. We're not, okay, God, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And we praise God. We do the same thing. And I think John Kerry and the Jews got it right. The Jews just are legitimate targets for calamity. Mm-hmm. We get it. We bring it back to life, and we understand. Hey, no one's even covering the Jews right now dying in Israel. Right now, as we sit here and do this show, there's probably going to be another attack on an Israeli. Mm-hmm. Some Palestinian's going to pull out a knife and try to stab him. And we get it. We move on. So to bring us back to where the topic is, 2 weeks ago, Sarah Littman was about to get married. They were having a pre-wedding party. The whole family is going to the wedding party. Palestinian terrorists come in and in one incident kill Sarah Littman's father and brother in one incident. I mean, it's horrible. This is devastating, a devastating thing, obviously. Now, just the other day, 3 days ago, the Littman family plus the entire state of Israel got together to have a wedding. A joyous occasion, dancing, singing. And Sarah Littman, instead of getting up and talking about the horrible Arabs, the people that did this, how could this happen to me, she gave a good speech, a good talk about this is life. This is what it is to be a Jew. This is how it is to we deal with this stuff. We face it. We will always be here. Jews will always be here. We will be faced with calamity, but Jews and Israel will continue on. A different story than we hear from what happened in America. No gun control. She didn't talk about killing Arabs. That's what she talked about.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, taking Sarah Littman's statement a step further, but first of all, I want to tell you something that you may not know, because this is just fresh off the news, and maybe you didn't even catch this. They, just this morning, they committed in Paris an extremely heinous crime that the chief of police was just livid about. Of course, you know that there's a climate conference.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And there have been people protesting the climate conference. And they were protesting in the same plaza where the memorials were set up to the victims of the killings of a few weeks ago. And all of a sudden, the police got really upset, and they actually started shooting tear gas, and they arrested busloads of people, and they turned into a melee, and it was horrible. So they asked the people, the police, what got them so angry? So here it is. The sin of sins was committed. The climate change protesters actually picked up candles from the memorial and were throwing them at the police. They were throwing the memorial candles at the police.
That's just bad.
Which not only did the police think like that, ouch, that hurts, but the police felt like it's a desecration.
It's almost sacrilegious, if you can use that word.
The climate change protesters were sacrilegiously defaming the memory of the other victims,
right.
And the police they went berserk, and they hauled the buses, and they just started packing all them in, and they drove them all off to jail, and they're really, really upset because they can't believe that these climate change, listen, you want to protest climate change is one thing. Now, I'm sure from the climate change protesters, they probably feel like if we could solve the problem of climate change, then we wouldn't have any of these murders. I'm sure
the president said that, so
right,
I assume they agree.
Right, so that would pretty much take care of that. So of course, they were probably making a statement. The lives of these people shall not have died in vain. They shall have died for the cause of climate change.
Climate change.
Yeah.
On a side note, really quick, by the way, I just want to throw this in when you're talking about climate change. My family's going to be going on a vacation in December, and I'm really looking for good weather. So if everybody out there, burn as much carbon as you possibly can to warm it up a couple degrees. Listen, after that, you can calm it back down. We need a lot of carbon before my vacation in December, but I'm sorry.
Okay, we got that. I'll jot that down.
I didn't want to interrupt. No,
anyway, the truth is that not only, and you might think, and you could get this impression, that the wedding here between, I think the name was Littman and Beagle, I think was his name. Maybe. She's now Mrs. Beagle, I believe. But anyway, the story was, of course, that she was engaged. It was going to be the weekend before the wedding, which customarily the groom is generally called to the Torah, and there's great festivities when that happens. Her father and brother went to the groom's to be with the groom that Shabbos so they could be part of the festivities, which is always on the Saturday preceding the wedding. And that's, of course, when her father and brother were murdered, by Arab terrorists who, and it plunged the whole family into tragedy. The wedding was, of course, postponed. They sat the week of Shiva, the mourning period, buried her father and her brother, and then they observed the mourning period, and now she is getting married, and the family decided that we're going to make a statement. So they made their wedding, they held it in a convention center, and they invited the world.
Right.
And the world attended this wedding. So she wasn't just saying that we understand, and we know how to suffer, and we know how to, keep our chin up. She was making a statement that we actually are living for something. And here's where the contrast is, and here's where the big problem is. The poor people in France, this is my opinion as I was watching these people, poor people in France, 130 people were killed, and nobody knows why.
I'm with you.
Nobody knows why. Even Kerry said it's, what did he say, it's senseless? Or
Senseless.
It's, yeah, right.
Absolutely right.
Nobody can figure out why. Now, of course, immediately, the Prime Minister, Hollande, declared that we're at war. Now, he didn't say who the enemy was. You know, like, we're at war. It's
right.
really, really hard to fight. I've looked this up in my history books. It's very hard to fight a war when you don't know who the enemy is.
Very difficult.
And in truth, these poor folks don't really know who the enemy is. And that is because they don't really stand for anything themselves. So how can you attack me? Like, if I don't stand for anything,
right?
Like, who are you attacking? Like, what do I want to do? I don't even stand for anything. So what happened? So they got attacked. So soccer match, restaurant, and rock concert, right? Those are all the venues.
How do you put those three things into a
So obviously,
box?
so what do they want to do? So at first, actually, and this really happened, they decided that we're going to protest, and a week later we're going to go out to the streets, we're going to go to restaurants, and we're going to go to soccer matches and go to concerts and celebrate all the things that they tried to wipe out. The only problem was that the next week it turned cold and was rainy, so they just didn't do that.
Kind of messed that up.
So you see, the thing is, how do you live for restaurants, soccer matches, and rock concerts?
Tough purpose.
Like, that's your purpose? And do you think, like, actually, do you expect me to die so that you can go to a restaurant? Do I die so that you can attend a rock concert? The rock concert, by the way, the title of the group that was putting on the concert, I think they had death in the title.
Eagles of death metal or something like that.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of interesting, sure, I would really put my life on the line so that you have the right to go to hear a band that has the word death in their title. Yeah, that's
the point.
That's really important to me. And if you had to sit down in a room with an ISIS guy, you would explain to him, we stand for, you're evil because you're trying to snuff us out. But we stand for what? French wine? The ability to drink French wine? You see, what's being lost here is, in America, they'll tell you, we stand for freedom. And we stand for freedom of speech and all this stuff, freedom of expression. What they're missing is, those are not goals. You cannot have a goal of freedom of speech. Those are rules. Those aren't goals.
That's true.
So there's a guy, Nathan Hale, right? Okay? Give his life for his country. He regretted that he had only but one life to give to my country. Now, to him, freedom of speech was important because he had something to say. If you have a speech, then you want freedom to say it. The goal isn't freedom to say it. The goal is what you want to say.
You have to say, yeah.
So if you have nothing to say, what do you need freedom of speech for? Of course, now we have freedom of speech, so people just getting up and blabbering any stupid thing, or doing any stupid thing, exposing any stupid thing. You have to have something to say. Freedom of religion is good if you have a religion. If you don't have a religion, what do you need freedom for? So all these freedoms are just rules. They're rules like, who yields to who in a traffic situation. They're just rules of interaction in a society so the society can function. And one of the rules is you have to have freedom of speech so the society can function. But freedom of speech is not a goal. Freedom is not a goal. Liberty. Liberty is a goal for people that are oppressed and they have something they want to express their liberty for. So in France, they want to say, no, we're going to make a big march. We're all going to go out to restaurants. What?
Like, who cares?
Who cares?
Right.
And should anyone die? You're going to raise your child to, take up arms and fight the enemy for the right to go to restaurants. So the guy says, well, you know what? I enjoy myself by going to the restaurant. But if I go fight with the enemy, then I'm going to die.
Could just eat home.
Yeah, I could die if I go to the restaurant, but I'm going to die if I go fight with the enemy. So yeah, okay, I'll pass on the restaurant. Because I tell you the truth, I never like to go to restaurants when I'm going to die. I just don't like restaurants when I die. Yeah, messes the whole thing. And to tell you the truth, I really don't like fighting with like ISIS people when I'm going to die either. So I'll stay home. Whatever. I'll eat at home. I'll order out.
That's true.
Like come on, they'll deliver the pizza to my house. I get it just the way I want it within 30 seconds. Otherwise, I get my free topping.
Right. Right. No, I can't argue that.
So they got nothing. They don't stand for anything. These poor folks, and that's why they can't understand why they were attacked. Now, from the ISIS perspective, that's exactly what enrages them, because they just a life that is so meaningless with no goal makes these people crazy. So the guy says, well, if life is meaningless and crazy, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out to Syria. These guys will give me a big, fat machine gun. Yeah. And I can go start shooting up people, which, since life is meaningless anyway, hey, I can ride around the back of a pickup truck and shoot at people, and maybe even, grab a couple of women and do with them what I want, and maybe even behead people. It's better than video games. We can behead people live.
Wow.
So that's cool. I mean, better than you guys. All you guys do is drink wine and go to soccer matches. I mean, and hear death concerts or Eagles of Death or whoever they are. We'll do death itself, even better.
Oh, yeah.
So they got two people. They're missing a point. Now, take a look at these other people. The other people are saying, no. What we're going to do is we're going to build. We're going to build something. So it says, this couple says, we came to Israel. Our families wandered around the world. I'm sure with names like Littman and Beagle, they probably had
Eastern Europe.
They probably spent a good few generations, if not a good few centuries in wandering around some countries of the world. And their families both found their way back to Israel. Why? Because that's part of a dream. Because they want to accomplish something. What they want to accomplish, this bride here. She is putting on a white dress. Because at her wedding, which the rabbi gets up and he took a cup of wine and he said, "Blessed are you, O God, King of the world, who sanctified us with his commandments." Ooh, there's an idea already. Sanctity, that a person can be elevated and can become holy. That's an interesting concept. With his commandments. Ooh, there's another concept. That God tells you what to do. But in doing so, your life becomes sanctified. And he commanded us not to have illicit relationship. But he did instead permit us to have relations with those people whom we have made a sacred commitment to. Like the kind where they put on a white dress and he puts on a white shirt and they make a commitment to each other. And everyone says, Mazel Tov. And when it's all said and done, you know what they all did? They drank wine. And the band played.
They celebrated.
And they danced.
Yeah.
And they danced. Now, just like in Paris, except they drank wine and they danced for a reason. Because they had created a new entity, this young couple. Now, in Paris, why do they go out and dance? A good virile Frenchman, probably. I guess, how would a Frenchman protest ISIS? Go commit more adultery?
Right.
I mean, what's
more you can do?
Yeah, what's the point? What are you going to do? Using all the stereotypical French stereotypes. I mean, stereotypes supposed to come from somewhere.
Right.
I didn't make them up. So this couple is saying, we're going to accomplish something. And that's when we drink wine. And that's when we dance. And that's when we listen to a band. And we love it when the band plays. But in their band, I guarantee you, the name Death wasn't in the title.
No.
They were probably maybe the name Life, like something having to do with Chaim or L'chaim, and everyone said to life, not to death. And they wanted to celebrate the fact that life can be sanctified and consecrated. So they did something of purpose. The poor French, they don't have a purpose. So they're fighting an enemy that they don't know. So here, you can fight the enemy by living your life's purpose. Now, you're a history buff,
Yep.
Okay, so what happened to Rome? Who got him?
Well, they got the Huns, they got the German hordes.
Right. the Visigoths,
and everybody else,
the Franks, and all these guys,
that,
the barbarians,
the
barbarians took over Rome. They had to get at the gates, and then they were inside again. They took over.
It was over.
You know why the barbarians took over? How could the barbarians get rid of? They're just a bunch of barbarians, and Rome is Rome. The reason the barbarians took over is because at that point, Rome, nobody lifted a finger.
No, they didn't. They were soft, and that was it.
Yeah, because everyone just wanted to find out who they were. They wanted to experience themselves. They knew that they didn't stand for anything. So why should they fight against the barbarians? Because they don't stand for anything. So that's why the barbarians, I guarantee you, 200 years earlier,
they would have had a problem.
Barbarians, would have attacked. They would have been wiped out.
I think they did, and they were wiped out. Yeah, multiple times.
They wouldn't even try, because at that point the Romans stood for something. They had like a lifestyle. They had a sense of meaning. They believed in something. They had goals. They were going to accomplish things. 200 years later, they didn't stand for anything. Like, we got it. We're fat. What do they stand for? We should go fight against the barbarians so that we have the right to drink wine in cafes? So no one stood up against them. And the barbarians, and these ISIS guys are for sure barbarians, the reason they are winning and are going to continue to win is because no one has a philosophy that can speak to them and say, no, you're wrong. What we're doing is right and it has meaning. Except for this young couple here and people like them who say, no, as much as you try, we still got married and we still started a family. And that just sends shivers through all these other guys, because when they see that, they go, oh man, we didn't accomplish anything. We're not making any progress. We're standing for something. We're trying to knock them off, but they keep standing for something. They keep believing and doing and keep building and making progress. And it just makes them even more infuriated because they can't stop them.
No, I mean, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And it kind of reminds me of something. Listen, everybody, we're designed to have a purpose. We're designed to live, especially Jews, but all people are designed to live with a purpose. And it kind of reminds me of something. I have a lot of collectors that come to my office to collect money. My collectors all fit into one specific, you can stereotype my collectors. 90% of them are from Israel. They barely speak English. They come, but they're all collecting. Now, listen, I know there's some that are more legitimate than others. I know some that are, better what they do, but they all are doing pretty much collecting for the same thing. They're collecting for orphans. They're collecting for widows. They're collecting for this. We brought these Jewish kids off the street, these boys that aren't learning, and we brought them into, not only do we feed them, but then we take them to a yeshiva, or we bring the girls in that are on the street and they're orphans, they don't have parents, and we don't just feed them, we teach them Torah, then we get them married, or we're collecting for a husband or for a brother's wedding or somebody's wedding. That's all they're collecting for, and then they come every day. Now, I say to myself, and I look out in the rest of the world, and I look at some of the liberals from the north and my family, what's your purpose? Yep, save the whales. Let's the climate change is a great thing. Let's fly around on our carbon guzzling jets and go out there and save the climate, because there's too much carbon dioxide in the world. Even that's hard to kind of explain, since we're right now breathing out carbon dioxide, and probably you'll hold your breath, but I think we're pretty much destroying the world. They come up with these because everybody has to have a purpose. I care about the transgendered, switch whatever type person, and I'll fight to the death for them. I care about people. Listen, I love animals, I really do. But PETA, if your whole life is PETA, and I'm going to see somebody in a fur coat, I'm going to throw paint on them. People don't have a real purpose. They come up with these things, and they have no reason to live their lives, which Jews and religious people, it's pretty clear. It's the Torah. And you can see the difference in the people. So it's not just what you die for and what you live for. You have to have a purpose in life. If not, you end up like the people in France with nothing. And listen, saving the whales is a great thing, but I'm not living my life to save the whales. Don't really care.
And these poor people, they won't know what. There's a video went viral. A guy is talking to his little child, and the child says, I don't understand what happened. And the guy's explaining to him that, these bad people. And he says, well, what are we going to do with these bad people? So he said, we're going to fight them with candles. We're putting out candles. They were standing by one of the memorials. We're going to fight them with candles. Now, of course the guy didn't say we're going to fight them, we're going to find them and kill them.
Right.
Because he probably is not interested in killing them. As a matter of fact, he would probably say to himself, why should I kill them? Is that really right for me? Just because they killed us, but why should we kill them?
Right.
In which case, I'm pretty sure that he's going to end up getting killed. But then, of course, like I said, now this morning, even he's fighting them with candles, and then the climate protesters picked up his candles.
Wow, that's the ultimate
They
insult
said,
here.
here is a guy. Oh, poor guy. Now he's fighting with candles, but instead they're throwing the candles at the police. They're supposed to throw the candles, I think, at ISIS or put up the candles. Or so confusing.
Yeah, I've always had a tough time, with the makeshift memorials that you have out there. I mean, like this, I was watching TV late last night, and I guess the President Obama had just got there, and they walked with the Hollande and someone else. I mean, it was Hollande's wife to the site of this thing, and they all three stopped. They stared for a while, like I guess in meditative, kind of thinking about something. I'm thinking, what the heck is going through his mind?
I feel it.
And they both kind of went like, kind of bowed a little bit like this, and then got up and walked away. And that was it. I mean, that was it. So I'm trying to say to myself, are you showing? I'm empathizing with the French people, or I'm sympathizing with those who died. I don't know what it is, but that's literally all there was to it. I guess you can forget about it and you move on.
Right.
And there is a big difference, and I think you hit on it pretty good here with Jews and how we handle things, how we deal with stuff.
So this couple, God willing, I bet you, if you'd ask them right now, are you planning on having children? I bet you she would say, yeah. And if you have a son, what are you going to name him? I bet you she would say, well, I'm going to name him after my father, right? And in that way, and we're going to train him, we're going to raise him, and we're going to train him to be a good person and to do good things in the world and to carry on after the dad after his murdered grandfather and murdered uncle. And in that way, says we are going to stay focused. We're going to make this world a better place. And we're going to carry out the message that the Jewish people have. And ultimately will make the world a better place because ISIS is going to defeat everyone that doesn't have a philosophy, as barbarians always do. But they're not going to defeat those that do have a philosophy and do live for something, and that something is something good.
I couldn't agree more. And that makes sense. And that's maybe why we need to live our lives with a little bit more of a purpose if we're not already.
Yeah.
Because that's how that works. All right, well, next week?
Next week's Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, we got good stuff to talk about.
Talk about Hanukkah, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of miracles, well, we'll be back next week and talk about Hanukkah then.
You know it.
All right.